Hey there folks, my name is Luke, this is Beautiful Susie, and welcome to the Outdoor Gear Review, where today we have some cold weather tips for you all.
So cold weather is a great time to think about hitting the trail and doing some backpacking and camping. The temps are cooler, you don't have to worry about bugs.
Yes!
The views can be even better because all the leaves are gone from the trees. So it's a great time to get out there, and we're going to give you tips to help you get started.
So we're talking about cold weather adventures. That means that you need a larger pack. In general, with colder conditions, you need a pack that offers you 25% more space than your summertime pack because your sleeping bag is bigger. You need additional insulation layers and so on. So start thinking about a larger size pack for your cold weather adventures. The next tip involves sleeping bags. Now, of course, it's colder, you need a warmer bag. When it comes to sleeping bags and their ratings, that is an average rating. Well, I don't really know anybody who's average. Everybody's different. So the range of that sleeping bag is going to be different for everyone. Keep that in mind. Generally, men are warmer than women, so you need to plan accordingly.
It's a good idea to pick a bag or a quilt that would be 10 degrees lower than the nighttime low that you're going out on. And that kind of covers all your bases. Make sure that it's 10 degrees lower than what you're expecting.
And if you're taking out a sleeping bag that's older, that's maybe lost some fill, you may want to consider bringing like a sleeping bag liner with you to add that additional warmth to it.
All right, moving on to sleeping pads. So your sleeping bag could be the warmest, loftiest bag, but if you don't have an insulated sleeping pad, you will get cold.
You may even want to consider bringing multiple sleeping pads to give you extra protection from the cold ground. So think R value, high R value, because when you're inside of your sleeping bag, you're compressing the fill. So you're relying on that sleeping pad to reflect back your heat. It's very important.
Right, so the higher the number on the scale of 1 to 9.5, the better you can insulate from the cold.
As you guys can see here, we are going through all of the gear and moving on to other specific tips. So talking about gear, let's talk about tents. There is a huge difference between 3-season and 4-season tents. The question becomes, do you need a true 4-season tent? For most people, they don't. If you're going out on a fall day like this where it's nice and cold, but you don't have to worry about strong winds or heavy snow, you do not need a 4-season tent. Yes, a 4-season tent, it's pretty nice because it can hold in, it can trap in quite a bit more heat. I mean, on average, 10 degrees compared to the outside temperatures. But with the right sleep system, the right sleeping pad, you don't need a 4-season tent.
So keep in mind when you head into higher elevations, you have strong winds, heavy snow, that is when you need a true 4-season tent. Otherwise, you can probably get away with a 3-season tent in the cold weather.
Oh yeah, I do it all the time, but when those storms hit, I go with the 4-season tent. Now, of course, we have to talk about condensation because that does go hand in hand with the cooler months. Make sure when you're setting up your tent that you have good airflow. That will help out a whole lot when it comes to condensation. You may want to consider bringing with you a light towel so in the morning you can clean up the moisture.
So with your tents on these cold weather trips, you want to make sure that you have lots of tent stakes for the tent. Doesn't matter if it's fall or winter. It could be windy the next morning when you wake up, and you really want to make sure that your tent is staked out very well.
Especially here in the mountains. In the wintertime, the fall months, man, I tell you, the wind plays a serious role in our weather. It can be fine one minute and extreme the next.
The next tip that we have for you guys is all about light. So when it turns colder and you get into winter, you have less light during the days. The days are shorter. So as soon as you get to your campsite, you want to make sure that you set up camp. You also want to be aware of how much time that you do have if you're going out for a long hike.
It is so easy to misjudge how much time you have left. I mean, you can look at your watch, it says 2 o'clock, and you're like, oh, I have so much time before it gets dark. No, not really. I mean, it happens all the time. So you need to be prepared for that. And you can prepare yourself by having a good headlamp, a good light source. You need to consider the cold. The cold zaps batteries, so you need additional batteries for whatever your light source may be.
So with any cold weather adventure, whether you're going out for a hike or camping, keep in mind that your phone will die faster too. The cold zaps them. So have an extra way to charge your phone.
Next up, everybody, you need to start thinking about additional clothing and additional insulation layers. Now, in the summer months, I typically do not carry with me much additional clothing, maybe a shirt, maybe a pair of socks, something like that. But in the wintertime, that definitely changes. You have to start thinking about sweating, hypothermia, having dry, warm clothes. So make sure to pack your clothing bag with everything that you need for your adventure.
Being outside in the cold is going to be all about layers. You need your base layer, you're going to need a warm insulating layer, you're going to need an outer layer to protect you from weather such as freezing rain, snow, any of those conditions. It's all going to be about your layers, and it's really important even in cold weather to be able to strip when you are getting warm. Strip one of those layers off. You're hiking up a mountain, even if it's snowing, you do not want to be sweating.
Sweat is incredibly serious, so make sure to pay attention to what you're doing, make sure to listen to your body, and adjust accordingly. So let's talk about materials here for just a moment of your clothing. Stay away from cotton. 100% cotton, it's a killer. It really is. I hear some people say cotton's fine. No, it's not. If you've ever been in the outdoors and you've worn cotton, you know how bad of a choice, a decision that is. When it gets wet, you are going to be incredibly cold. It's a horrible material for the outdoors in the fall and winter months. So you want to stick with materials that will keep you warm even when wet, and also materials that dry quickly. So synthetics are fine, nylon, polyester. You can go with a merino wool, which is a natural material. Fantastic. Now, when it comes to the next tip, it's all about gloves. Anytime that I go out on a backpacking trip, I always make sure to have 2 pairs of gloves with me. One pair, which is thick enough to basically take the cold edge off. They still offer me a ton of dexterity. I can do anything that I need to. I can work around camp. I can hike with them. I can easily take them off. And generally, those are knit gloves. You can find these just about anywhere. They're super cheap. They do not last forever, but they last usually a season. In addition to those gloves, I'll have a thicker pair of gloves that are very warm, that are waterproof, that allow me to work in the snow, and also keep my hands very warm when I'm sitting around camp, and so on. With having 2 pairs of gloves in this combination, you can take care of yourself in any sort of situation. You could work around camp, you could stay warm when you're sitting still, you could work with the snow, and so on. Next, I want to talk about shoes, everyone, because there are many different types of shoes. Each one has a pro and a con, so you really need to plan out for your adventure. Bring the right shoes for the job. As with every aspect of your trip, you really need to plan it out. So let's say that you're going out for a day hike or an overnight trip. There's going to be a lot of snow. Potentially, the ground's going to be wet. Maybe even the bushes, the trail that you're hiking on is going to be wet. You need to consider that and plan accordingly when it comes to your footwear. Do you need a waterproof boot? Or can you get away with a trail shoe that's non-waterproof? For myself, I generally wear waterproof boots for snowy environments and lightweight trail shoes that are not waterproof, that are very breathable for when it's dry and cold. When it's dry and cold and I'm wearing trail shoes, I will wear thicker socks. It also allows my feet to breathe, my socks aren't wet from sweat because they're breathing, and I stay comfortable. Something else to consider is that if you're a cold-natured individual, you may want to wear waterproof shoes or boots because those shoes, those boots will hold in more heat, your feet stay warmer. If your feet are warm, you are generally going to be warmer. That waterproof layer will trap in more heat, but there is a con to that, because your socks will get wet with sweat because waterproof boots and shoes do not breathe well. If you're going to take waterproof shoes or boots, bring extra socks with you. Next, you have to think about gaiters. Do you need gaiters for your adventure? Are you going through deep snow? Is it wet conditions? Are you going to be rubbing up against potentially wet bushes and so on? Next, you need to think about socks, and there are multiple weights of sock out on the market. You can get lightweight, midweight, and heavy weight. Heavier weight means warmer. What do you need for your adventure?
All right, so the next tip is all about our food and water. You guys are gonna need extra food when the temperature decreases. Your body will want extra carbs, extra fat. It helps you stay warmer, so bring extra food. As for your water bottles, you can do things as bringing it inside your tent. You can turn it upside down so that it freezes at the very bottom instead of at the opening. So one last thing about the food and water around your campsite is keep things clean, keep your food picked up. Animals still are stirring, and you gotta be diligent about it.
Because this video is getting long, we will go through these rather quick. Now, while you're out hiking with your buddies, you may be thinking it's a good idea to have some drinks. Well, folks, that is a bad idea when the temperatures get low. Alcohol actually thins your blood and makes it harder for you to stay warm. Next up, if you have a wet piece of clothing, do not try to dry this by keeping it inside of your sleeping bag with you. This will only moisten the bag and will lessen its ability to keep you warm.
Another tip is to bring something to sit on around camp. You're gonna want something to sit on to protect your bottom from the cold and from it being wet. Think of something like bubble wrap or a large mailing envelope. All of that's really lightweight and it works really great to sit on.
Now, next up, folks, you need to consider bringing extra fuel with you when it comes to cooking and heating up water and so on for that all-important cup of coffee. In colder temperatures, you need more fuel. In other words, colder temperatures equal longer cooking times. Now, the next piece of advice is good for any season, any type of trip. Before you head out, you need to make sure that your gear is in good functional order. Set up the tent, check the zipper. You do not want to be sorry when you head out onto the trail. Make sure that you have the stakes, the poles, and so on. Make your checklist, check it twice, and make sure that your gear is in good shape. If there's any issues, make repairs, get new gear, do whatever you have to do to be safe. All right, guys, to wrap this up, there's a couple common sense sort of things that you need to be thinking about. First off, you really need to plan ahead. Make sure that the trail is open. With the weather conditions changing so frequently, some of your favorite trails may be closed, maybe too much snow. So make sure to really plan things out. Make some phone calls, check online, do whatever you have to do to make sure that you can actually go out on your adventure. Of course, you want to check the weather, make sure the weather's good for your trip, make sure that you can handle the conditions that are forecasted, and you want to plan for the worst. I mean, freak snowstorms happen, temperatures drop lower than they're forecasted, so you need to be ready. You need to have the right gear, you need to have the right knowledge. You guys have seen me do all sorts of crazy adventures in the cold, and I can do that because I have the right gear, the right knowledge, and I plan. It takes planning.
Really, when it gets cold, this is when this guy wants to get out.
Yeah.
He would go out every other day.
I would.
When the temps drop, the bugs disappear. He loves to explore, and so it's a great time of the year to take advantage of that. When it's snowing, it is so pretty. It's a great time. Don't let the cold temps hold you guys back.
That's right. The last storm that I went out in, 2 feet of snow fell.
2 feet.
Yeah, it was a heck of a storm. It was a great adventure. Hope you guys enjoyed that. But yeah, when it gets cold, there's some additional steps that you have to take, that you need to take. And your adventures could be so much fun. You can have just as much fun that I have. Susie has a good time in the cold, but I mean, you should see the amount of clothing that she brings with her.
Don't tell them that.
Women are colder in general. It's how it goes.
Hey, that's why they make hand warmers, guys.
Right.
Buy those suckers in bulk. You're gonna be fine.
Oh yeah. Make sure to bring hand warmers.
Yeah.
Lots of them.
Lots of
that's
them.
a huge tip. It really is. It's so simple. Make sure that you have your hand warmers with you, not only for your hands, but your feet. I put them in my socks at night.
Yeah.
We all do. And oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not just me that uses those. You should see
yeah.
him. He cuddles with them.
Oh, I do.
He has them in his socks, in his gloves. He's just snuggled up to one. So yeah, hand warmers, that is a great tip. Bring lots of them. So one last final thought for you guys is when it comes to winter trips or cold weather temps, just keep it simple.
Yeah, Susan brings up a good point here. When it comes to these wintertime trips, generally they're going to be harder than, say, your summertime trip. So cut back on your adventure somewhat, or make sure to plan accordingly, because things are going to be so much harder. It's going to take so much more time hiking through the snow, especially if it gets deep, if you're using snowshoes. Wow, incredibly slow. So really plan your trip to fit what you can actually do in the time that you have to do it in.
Right.
Realistic expectations, make it simple.
All right, guys, go out there, have fun, enjoy the cold weather, bundle up.
Oh yeah, make sure to comment down below, share your favorite fall, winter tips, cold weather tips with everybody else. I mean, there's so many that we can go over, and we will go over those in future episodes. But for now, that's it. Strength and honor, stay warm. See you guys around.
Bye.
Bye.